Hi, I'm Rajiv Masand, and today I'm so happy to be joining the Quint to talk about Sholay. We are, of course, celebrating 50 years of what is arguably Hindi cinema's most popular film. And to be able to talk about a film that has meant so much to all of us, myself included, of course, is just a great opportunity. I feel like Sholay is a film that's a little older than I am. I can't remember when I first watched it. I was probably a kid. I was probably on Doordarshan. I don't think the first time I watched Sholay was on a big screen. Sholay had released about 2 years, I think, before I was born. So I probably discovered it when it was playing on television, and I think I was too young to absorb the greatness, the cinematic marvel that Sholay was when I perhaps first watched it. I think it's while I was probably a little older, probably in studying film in college, that one really understood what Sholay meant and why it is such a benchmark in Hindi cinema. Of course, when you think of Sholay, you think of those incredible characters. I think that very rarely does a film come along where you remember not only the leads, not only the principal characters, but every little supporting actor, every little supporting character that had even a bit part in it. The lines, the dialogues in Sholay became sort of punchlines. They became, they're used in, it's a bit like The Godfather. You use lines from the film in everyday use. They went on to become a part of our daily parlance, and that is something that's quite incredible. In the way that after Sholay, of course, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge was. So I think the impact of Sholay can be felt not just for film buffs and cinephiles who love the film and love the just the cinematic greatness of what Ramesh Sippy achieved, but also in daily use, right? I think even people born years later will still say, कितने आदमी थे, और भाग धन्नो आज बसंती की इज्जत का सवाल है, things like that. These are iconic lines which became part of our everyday use, and I think that therein lies some of the greatness and the impact of a film that became part of our sort of collective consciousness. I'm going to talk about three scenes or three moments that for me are very, very special. These are personal choices. It's impossible to pick just 3 or 5 or even 10 of the best scenes, because this is a film that's so beautifully written and so carefully sort of hatched, that it's hard to identify or pin down just 2 or 3 of the best bits. Above everything else, for me, Sholay is about friendship. It's about Jay and Veeru. It is a story of friendship. It is, of course, a story of revenge, and it's a love story as well. It's many things at once, but for me, Sholay, what sort of directly spoke to me was the friendship. It was these two men who went on this mission, and just this unconditional sort of friendship. So, of course, the song, Ye Dosti Hum Nahi Chodenge. I mean, it is iconic. That song on the bike is something that is impossible to forget. It's just also those costumes became iconic. Bachchan Saab's sort of blue denim. I mean, he sort of put denim on the map, if you like, after Sholay. To me, that sequence, that song was will always be the first thing I think of when I think of Sholay. The song went on to become an anthem. It is the #1 friendship anthem for this country. The sidecar of the motorbike. So for me, that song and just the friendship between Jay and Veeru is what Sholay means to me first, above everything else. Thakur coming back, and finding the bodies. I think we're 50 years into the film, so I think there's no we don't have to worry about spoilers. The family being killed and discovering all those bodies, and then of course there is that last body, which is the shorter body. So that's the kid, and that's the body that's completely covered, the corpse that's completely covered with that white cloth, and Thakur, of course, removing that white cloth. and you never see the face because you know who it is, and you have to understand this is a film that was made 50 years ago. Hindi cinema was about spoon feeding audiences, and yet Ramesh Sippy, the film's director, made this incredible decision, which incredible perhaps in retrospect, but made this decision to not show the face, obviously to save us the trauma of seeing a little child who had been sort of also brutally murdered in that massacre, and just the impact when you don't see that face. You just see it, you see the white cloth in the breeze, and then of course Thakur lifts it, and before you, I mean, the first time anyone watches it, of course, you want to turn away because you kind of know who it's going to be, but just making that decision to not show the face and letting you absorb just the enormity and the and just the severity of that massacre, and then of course him going to to Gabbar Singh. But that scene always sort of sends a chill down one's spine, because very early on, it sort of sets the tone for and raises the stakes for what is going to happen. Veeru teaches Basanti to use the gun because he's shooting those Keri, the arm from the tree, which she has to take back because her Mausi has to make the achar, and she's of course throwing stones to hit the mangoes, but Veeru teaches her to use the gun, and if you look at it, look, 50 years later, you can say it's a little bit cringy and it's a little bit kind of creepy because he's practically groping her, but it's just such a fun, cute scene. And I think that's the thing about popular Hindi cinema, right? And anything that goes on to become the stuff of legend, that even when looked through the lens of current times, I mean, some of that is politically incorrect, and you don't treat a lady like that, and you don't, it's is it stalking, is it flirting, but it just it's so innocent because Basanti, of course, is this girl who can't stop talking, and she so naively kind of allows him to show her how to use the gun, and him sort of closing her eye and then holding her stomach and nuzzling her till she, of course, shoots that bullet and they fall on the ground. And of course, Jay watching all everything from there, and actually the one who fires the bullets that impresses her in the first place. A lovely scene, beautiful way to do sort of a meet cute moment, and just one of my favorite scenes, also because one of my favorite characters was Basanti by Hemaji, and she was just so fun and so cute, and I think that again, this is the thing about great filmmaking, where you can take a character who could be so easily annoying and irritating, and yet make her someone that is so endearing, and you completely sort of fall in love with Basanti, even as everyone else around her. Even when she meets the Imam and Imam Chacha and all, like, he's exasperated because she doesn't stop talking, and that's who Basanti is, and yet she's just such an endearing character. What is exciting about Sholay is what you see on screen, but also all of the stories and the legends that it has inspired and spawned. And I think that is what happens when great films are made. They become the stuff of legend. And I think that 50 years on, while technique has changed, and while we've become a lot more sophisticated in our storytelling and our shot taking, you have to remember this is a film that was made in 1975, and it's a film that was way ahead of its time in terms of the way that it was shot. The big train sequence, the action sequence in the train. I mean, even today you find it's hard to find action sequences shot in such a way. Just the detailing of the characters, the writing, the script by Salim Javed is really one of the greatest scripts written. It's fashionable perhaps to look back, for I think a lot of the younger generation looks back at older films and says, but what is such a big deal? It's an old film, and some of that argument, perhaps when you look at it through the lens of younger people who didn't live in those times, and who didn't who discovered these films much later on. I think perhaps that's their way of looking at it. But a film like Sholay really stands up because and holds up because the story feels compelling, and the characters. I think it's really about the characters. I think what Salim Javed did is they gave us a smattering of really interesting characters that have their own little quirks or have their own little characteristics, and it's hard to really forget any of them. Whether it's Jailer, whether it's Jayaji's character. I mean, even the bits that had the characters that had sort of single lines. Samba. I mean, it's the stuff of legend, and I just think it's so exciting and perhaps even blessed to be living in the times when Sholay is completing 50 years. A long time ago, I had a chance to sit down with Ramesh Sippy, the film's director, and talk to him about the making of Sholay. And that to me itself was just such a huge high, because to be able to have that privilege and have that luxury to be able to sit with the director of Sholay and hear from him firsthand how they shot those scenes, how they wrote those lines, how they achieved what they did. I think that is just such a huge privilege. So, happy birthday, Sholay. You've aged like fine wine. You don't look 50, and you're a film that continues to bring joy into our lives. It's a film that, of course, one refers to as, it is the godfather of Hindi cinema. If Godfather is the greatest American film ever made, Sholay probably is the best best Hindi film certainly ever made, and a film that has spawned so many imitations, which fortunately or unfortunately were never were a patch on the original real deal. Happy birthday, Sholay! You make 50 look very good.